So how much power do unions in this country have? It's a discussion with people on every side. People with strong opinions about just what role unions do play and what role they should play in the future. Michael Prysner is a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. He's in our Los Angeles studio. And here in Washington, the president of Less Government, Seton Motley. Michael, I want to start with you. We saw this in Metropolis. As you saw the story, we're seeing it right now in Wisconsin. Public workers fighting for their rights. It seems to me they're fighting not for higher wages or a better way of life. They're simply fighting to hold on to what they have. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, the reason we're in this situation right now, and what's happening in Wisconsin is happening all over the country. What's happening is there's a budget deficit. There's an economic crisis. And there's a budget deficit because of the banks. This is a crisis that we know was created by Lehman Brothers, by Citibank. This is a crisis created by the banks, created by the super rich. But what's happening now is that there's a demonization of public sector workers, of steel workers, of teachers, of nurses, as if they are the ones that created the crisis, as if it's somehow their fault. Now, the burden of this crisis, this burden of this budget deficit, is being shouldered on working families, the people that need help the most, while the millionaires and billionaires who created the crisis are experiencing record profits.
All right, Seton, we should say right off the bat that you are against unions. What do you see as the biggest issues
Well,
here?
I'm first and foremost against public unions, public sector unions. I want to point out the oxymoron in his organization's name. Socialism and liberation do not go together. The public sector unions have bankrupted states all across the country. And it's not because of the banks, it's because of their overly priced wages and benefits. They do 2 to 1 better than the taxpayers that are paying their salaries. So to say that this has anything to do with the banks or anything else, this has to do with the unions thugging their way through negotiations in a situation where the union representative is in the room, the elected officials are going to bribe with contributions is in the room, and the taxpayers not in the room. So their salaries and benefits go up and up and up. They bankrupt state after state after state, and as a result, we have the situations with the budget crises in states all across the country.
Michael, you want to respond to that?
Sure. Overly priced wages and benefits. I mean, you're saying you're against people making a living, against people having
I'm against them making 2 to 1. I'm against them making a 2 to 1 living over what the people footing the tab are making.
No. I mean, I'm saying I'm for people being able to make a living. I'm for people being able to go to the doctor when they're sick. What you're trying to do is trying to pit public sector workers against private sector workers. Now, public sector workers, with the gains that they've won, with the wages and benefits they've received, that puts pressure on the private sector to compete with those wages, to compete with those benefits.
And that's why they're bankrupting the states, and that's what's
the only thing standing in the way of this anti-union drive.
We don't have the money anymore, Michael. Michael, we don't have the money anymore.
What you're trying to do...
The states don't have the money anymore.
I want to get in here real quick, guys. And this is a common argument that we hear. You know, that unions were needed back when they first started in the 30s. That they had influence. But now that this economy is in a different place, and that's a common argument that people, not even to your position, but a lot of people in the middle road are making. They're saying, we've come to a time where we can no longer afford to meet the demands of some of these unions because it's going to be Americans or people will be working in India.
And the private sector reflects that. Less than 10% of workplaces in the private sector are unionized, but upwards of 40% in the public sector are. And what they become is left-wing Democrat fundraising and campaign machines. And that's why these people want to protect it, because they grow government incessantly. We can't afford it anymore. We don't have the money. Even Andrew Cuomo, the liberal Democrat in New York, is shutting down the union payoffs because they can't afford it. They don't have the money.
I want to read something that appeared in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel this week. The public sector union tantrums meant to make lawmakers wobble have an inadvertent message for the rest of us. Voters can vote all they want. We can elect a cheapskate governor and a legislature to match. But come the moment, unions will have the loudest word. Michael, I'm wondering, I mean, this is obviously in regards to what's going on in Wisconsin with the workers there fighting not to have to pay more in health benefits. What do you think about this? I mean, to call these workers people that are simply throwing tantrums.
Right. Well, what Seton is trying to do and what the governor of Wisconsin is trying to do is pit public sector workers against private sector workers, right? Saying that they're making all of this money at the expense of everyone else. Well, I think that that's actually, there's a huge propaganda campaign in Wisconsin saying that exact thing. But the workers are not buying that. And what you're saying that the taxpayers are left out of the argument. They're not left out of the argument. They're occupying the buildings right now in Wisconsin.
No, they're not. No, the taxpayer leaders are occupying the governor's office. The White House, the taxpayer leaders are.
And private sector workers are marching shoulder to shoulder together.
No, they're not. The private sectors are the ones that elected the governor to stop the payoffs to the unions.
Well, the governor.
There are tens of thousands of workers in the street right now.
Yeah, they bust them in. Organizing for America, BarackObama.com, all these people. This is not a Wisconsin issue anymore. This is a national issue. They bust them in from all over the place. It's a giant show trial. It's baloney. The people of Wisconsin elected this governor to cut the spending, and to cut the spending to these overpaid union workers. And it's happening now. Elections, we heard in 2009, elections have consequences, and they have consequences in 2010. He was elected to do just this. He ran on this, and now he's doing it. And now the union thugs are shutting down operations in the state Senate because they won't let a vote happen. And the Democrats ran scared like chickens out of the state in a school bus.
I want to talk about power and influence when it comes to some of these companies. Honeywell, as we just saw, they want to scale back what it pays in health care costs for its employees, who, as we saw, are often exposed to dangerous working conditions.
Well, they say they are. There's no evidence that they were connected.
Did you not see the pictures of that guy with his face that was burned?
No, but the story itself said these employees allege that there's a connection to Honeywell. There's no evidence that they're alleging a connection to Honeywell.
They work with yellow cake. They work with uranium, hydrochloric acid. They're certainly in more dangerous positions than we are sitting at a desk. But last year, Honeywell, who doesn't want to pay these workers health insurance
no. They pay much more.
Right, they want to pay less.
Any other job does.
Let's talk about what they're doing with their money instead. They took the lead in political giving with lobbying efforts higher than ever.
It's their money.
Michael, what's going on here?
Sure. Well, I mean, I hope I can finish the sentence, and I hope you get to finish the sentence without being shouted over for the duration of this discussion.
If you start telling the truth, I'll stop.
But apparently not, as I'm saying.
Go ahead, Michael.
But look, what's happening at Honeywell, what's happening in Wisconsin, really there are two sides to this argument. There are two sides to this battle. The side that Seton is on, right? I mean, he talks about him and his Tea Party friends and the right wing, the Republicans. They talk about freedom. They talk about liberty. But what they're saying what they mean is that the freedom of owners of companies, of states, to lay off workers whenever they please, to deny people benefits whenever they please, to cut people off from health care, to cut people off from an education, the freedom to charge people poverty wages, to deny them benefits. The other side of the battle is saying that we create the wealth in the society, that those workers at Honeywell create the billions of dollars that those CEOs are taking home after doing absolutely no work at all except owning the company. All of those workers in Wisconsin are the ones that make the state strong, just like workers in every other state. And as workers, we need to be united together and demanding that these cuts and this budget crisis is not on our shoulders. He keeps saying that there's not enough money, but the money should come from the rich. How about taxing the wealthiest 1% that's immune from this crisis? How about taxing those corporations who pay no taxes at all, who bring in billions of dollars and then go ahead,
are you going to filibuster the rest of the time?
Get all this bailout money and then don't hire a single person and in fact lay off workers instead?
Seton, you were saying earlier, you said, Honeywell, it's their money. They can do whatever they want. But this is not money that the workers are asking for more. They're just asking to stay as is. And
it's not sustainable.
But why are they spending so much money on lobbying? Why don't they give it to their workers who got them where they were?
Because that plant, as in the story said, has lost $100 million in the last 10 years.
They've actually gained 4% in profit.
But they've lost $100 million. The net is the dollar amount is what's important. And they've lost $100 million.
At that plant,
yes.
Overall, as a company, they've gained.
But that's the plant they're cutting the benefits for. And they're not cutting benefits. They're asking the employees to chip in more, which is certainly not an unreasonable request. I certainly had to, when I was not self-employed, I had to chip in far more for my health benefits than they do at Honeywell. So this is not like they're asking for draconian situations. They're asking to get closer to reality, closer to what the rest of the private sector is dealing with as this economic crisis plays itself out and is weighted down by Obama's additional policies. policies.
All right, Michael, we're almost out of time. Just your thoughts, final thoughts on sort of what you see happening, especially in light of what's going on in Wisconsin.
Sure. You know, there's a company in Wisconsin called Johnson Controls. They received hundreds of millions of dollars in stimulus money, made record profits last quarter, and did not hire a single person. But the CEO of that company made about $18 million himself, one person, in his salary for the year. That came from our tax money. That came from the product of our labor. Now, Seton's argument, the argument of the governor of Wisconsin, and the argument of all these right-wingers and Tea Parties around the country is their argument is in support of those multimillionaires and billionaires who contribute absolutely nothing. Our argument, what we're saying, the right to organize unions, the right to fight collectively, to defend our wages and to defend our benefits, that's in the interest of all of the nurses and teachers and students and firefighters and steelworkers and all people working to make a living who collect a paycheck around the country.
All right,
so
we are out of time, unfortunately.
Your arguments may sound very nice, but there are more of us than there are of you, and that's why we're going to win.
And as is evidence here, this is certainly an argument with many, many different sides. Seton Motley, the president of Less Government, and Michael Prysner, a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.